Okay, welcome to my kitchen. So I'm going to show you my process of how I bake sourdough bread. I'm not a professional cook, I am a professional golfer. And what does a golf pro know about making sourdough bread? Well, I learn a bit every day. So I started this process a few years ago and then stopped. And then I restarted in March this year. So I've refined my process. And I've got to say that making sourdough is totally different to making normal bread. And the first element you need when you make sourdough bread is you need a lot of patience. The other thing I've learned is that just because this recipe is going to work really well in my kitchen right now, it may not work exactly that way in your kitchen. For a start, the temperature in my kitchen at the moment is 13 degrees. So it's winter, I haven't put the heating on, and I know that in a few months' time when the weather gets warmer, I'm going to have to adapt. So don't be frightened to try things. My sister lives in another part of Melbourne and she's been making sourdough bread, and she can't use exactly what I do. So she has to adapt quantities and things like that as you go. So don't be frightened to play around. I've discovered that the worst possible result you can have is if you have a failure of sourdough bread, you could always cut it up and call it croutons. So don't be feared, just know that you've got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. So I've probably baked over 100 sourdough loaves since March when I started doing it this time around. So you eventually get good at it and it becomes pretty consistent. So I'm going to talk you through my process. So the first thing that we need, I'm going to make 2 loaves. So what I need here is 400 mils of water. So I'm going to get my 400 mils of water. There's 200. And I'll get another 200. Now I've seen a lot of other people make sourdough loaves, and they're very much weight conscious. I don't own a set of digital scales. I have an old-fashioned set of scales here, and I just use that, and I don't know that it has to be absolutely exact. You know, hundreds of years ago when they started discovering how to make bread and using this method, they probably didn't have scales at all, so they went by eye. So I usually do a lot by eye and rough measurements. So don't feel, oh, I've got to know exactly what it is. It's a little bit adaptable. So I've got my water. That was just cold water out of the tap, as you just saw. I always smell my sourdough starter, so it always looks fantastic. It smells really good. It's not too overpowering, but it's just very slightly sour. I get a couple of sweet notes in there. So I've got this great little thing called a chopstick, and I'm just going to give my sourdough starter a bit of a stir. Now, at some point I will make a video on how I made my sourdough starter, and when I do that, I'll put a link in a card at the top of this video about there now. But until I do that, you'll just have to improvise along the way. So I'm going to put 200 mils of starter, and the reason I want 200 mils of starter is that it's winter, and I'm using a lot of that starter there. And I've still got a little bit of dregs in there, but I'm going to use that to make my next starter. So I'm going to put that over here. I've got some more starter in a different bowl. So I'm going to give that a bit of a stir. So when I started, I didn't use 200 mils of starter, but I've adapted it because it is winter and things don't get as well. In fact, I'm going to add just a little bit more. So there's a few dregs in there, as you can see. So I'll use that to feed my starter a little bit later. Just get my chopstick back out. So there's about 225 mils of starter. I'm going to put that in there, and it was nice and frothy and bubbly. I fed that last night before I went to bed, and that's usually the process that I do. And when I make my sourdough, I really don't want it to be all-encompassing. I want to make it fit into my lifestyle as much as possible. I don't want to be a slave to the sourdough. So this is how I've adapted my recipes to fit into my lifestyle. So I'll give that a bit of a stir, pop that in the sink. So just stir that up, it becomes a milky sort of liquid. Now, next thing I do is I want 200 grams of flour. So there's 100, a bit more. As I said, I don't measure too exactly, that's probably just a fraction over. I think near enough is good enough in this. So there's my 200 grams of flour. Pop this back here, out of the way. So I whip that in. Now I get my wholemeal spelt flour. This is organic wholemeal spelt flour. It's sometimes a bit hard to get around here, so I just buy this from the local supermarket. Once again, another 200 grams. Pop that back there. Whip that in. Get rid of all of that. I'll pop this back over here out of the way. Okay, so now I just get my chopstick and I just mix it. I've got to say, while I'm mixing it, usually when I'm cooking, when I cook anything, I've got Miles Davis playing in the background. Quite often my go-to is his album Kinda Blue, so I can't actually do it because YouTube will take it down, or they'll suspend me, or they'll take some action because I don't have the license to play it. So you just got to imagine that in the background you've got Miles on muted trumpet playing on his album So What. So if it's not that, I've usually got some sort of jazz playing. If I'm cooking in the afternoon, I usually have a glass of red wine. Possibly no red wine goes into the bread. I don't think that would taste very good, but it's good for the chef to have a little glass of red as he's doing it. In the morning, I usually have a coffee, but I forgot to make myself a coffee earlier, so we'll just go au naturel. So I'm just mixing this up as we go. It's not an exact thing, just trying to incorporate as much of this flour as I possibly can. That's about it there. Good. So that's pretty much the first part. Now, I've seen a lot of different recipes and different versions of this, and some people mix the flour and the water and then add the starter later. I don't know why I started doing this, but I always like experimenting, and I just find this works. Now, there's no scientific fact behind this, but if you haven't been vigilant and fed the starter as well as what you could have, I think this process works really well, because you're putting the starter in, you've got flour and water in there, and it's roughly an equal amount. So it helps feed the starter. So I'm going to leave this sit now. I'll put a tea towel over the top and I'll let it sit for, anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 hours. It just depends on the temperature. But I go by what it looks like, and later on when we come back, we're going to see lots and lots of bubbles, hopefully, and then we'll get into the next phase. So right now, I'll just put this back in the sink. I'll grab a tea towel, just any old tea towel, put it over the top, and we'll come back later and check it. Okay, so about 6 hours have elapsed since we last looked at it, so I'm going to take off the tea towel. And we can see here that there's lots of little bubbles. So there's it's becoming quite airy, and the gases are escaping and making it bubble. So we're now ready for the next step. So the next step is we've got to add some more flour. So let's add another 200 grams of bread flour. Gee, that was good, spot on. So I'll pop that one in there. And I'll move this off to the side. Then we get 200 grams of spelt. which is right there. So I'll add that in. We'll move this away. And we then have to add a teaspoon of salt. So I've got a bit of a weird teaspoon here, a shell, but it works out. I'm a bit adverse to salt, and I don't like the taste of salt, but I usually don't add salt into anything, but in sourdough bread I do add a little bit of salt. But people add a lot more salt than I do. So that's that. So the next thing is we have to start mixing it in and incorporating all of the flour and the salt into the mixture. So once again, I use my chopstick and we just keep stirring it. At this point, it doesn't have to be an absolute perfect ball of dough. We're just trying to incorporate most of this flour in. So it actually feels quite silky. And now you can feel it starting to harden up just a little bit. Here it goes. Some people, I think, use an automatic machine to do this. I've got one, but I don't use it. I quite like this process, and just using the chopstick works for me. There's also lots of special tools you can get to do the job, but hey, chopsticks are good. So you can see that forming into a more of a ball. Oh, put that one back in. That's pretty good. So it's all forming into a tight little sort of ball now. That's pretty much how I'm going to leave it, just for now. Now we have to put the tea towel back over, and then we wait again for about an hour for the next stage. Okay, so now we're up to the next step. So it's been an hour since I let it rest, and that's given the flour a chance to absorb a lot of the moisture that was already in there. So I've got a bowl of warm water just here. So the next step is we just have to get all this into a bit more of a solid ball. So I just, using wet hands, I just give it a bit of a knead in the bowl, and it, not too much of a knead, but just trying to absorb all of the rest of the flour. And what we have to do here is make sure that the gluten development is good. So that's going to create the right structure inside the bread in the final result. So that's looking much better. So what we do now is we do what's called stretch and fold. So we just pick up the dough and then put it on top of itself, and then pick it up, stretch it out again, fold it back on itself, and then another half turn. So this is my third. So we just stretch it, and it's all very stiff at the moment, it's not that pliable. And then we give it another turn, give it a real stretch. If I sort of pull it now, it'll break apart. So I usually do this about 8 times. So that's 4. So all the empty flour, or the excess flour, has been absorbed now in there. There's nothing much left in the bottom of the bowl. Fold it over itself, give it a quarter turn, lift it up, fold it over itself, and then I'll do one more. So that's pretty much it. Then we put the tea towel over the top, and then we let it rest for 20 minutes. Okay, so 20 minutes have transpired. We'll take this off, and yeah, it's looking quite nice. It's a little silky on the outside. I've still got my warm water here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do another set of stretch and folds. So I can feel the dough is a little bit softer, a little bit more pliable. So, you know, I can certainly feel it stretching, so the glutens are being developed. So that's one turn. Then we just do the same thing, fold it back over itself, lift it up again after a quarter turn, fold it back, and this will be 4. You can feel the weight, just stretch it out, fold it over itself. We'll do it again. So the stretching and fold technique, as I said, it helps to develop the glutens, which gives you a nice crumb texture in the bread, and it won't be too dense. There, 2 more to go, so we lift it up. One final one. Fold it over itself. That's pretty good, so we'll put the tea towel back on and we'll give it another 20 minutes. Okay, so 20 minutes have elapsed, and we're going to take a look now. It's certainly looking a lot silkier, and this will be the final stretch and fold that we do. So warm water, wet hands again. You know, I can feel the dough is a lot softer, and it's a lot more pliable, and it's softer, and you can stretch it, and it's not breaking apart. It's sort of getting thinner at the top. And there's a test you can do, which is called the window pane test, which means you stretch it, and as long as it doesn't tear apart and it gets thinner and thinner, and it gets to the point where it's a window pane, which is about where we're at there, that's pretty good gluten development. So that's 2. Stretch again. Another quarter turn over the top. And it feels, I love the feel of the dough. It's quite wet, but it feels really nice and silky. Okay, so that's the stretch and folds done. So we're going to put the tea towel over the top, and we'll let it rest for another 20 minutes. Okay, so another 20 minutes have elapsed. So we're pretty much ready to start our final shaping. Just before we do, we're going to do a little bit of prepping. So I've got a Benetton basket that I use quite regularly, but for these 2 loaves tonight, I'm not going to use it. These are fantastic, but I'm going to use something else because you may not all have a Benetton basket. So what I'm going to use instead is a plastic colander. So this is the sort of colander, I bought these because I got ricotta cheese in them. If you haven't got that, don't worry. Just use a bowl that's a little bit bigger than the one that I've got my water on. So we need to get some rice flour, and my prep is I'm going to just sprinkle rice flour over the top of the centre of both of these tea towels. And the reason we use rice flour is it's a coarse flour, and as a result things don't tend to stick to it very much. So I'm then going to get my colander and slide it under there, and then I'll get my other colander and I'll slide it under there. Just mix it round, cover the tea towel so nothing tends to stick, a bit of excess. I'll just put in there. Good. So now off with the tea towel, and we've got our dough. So I'm just going to wet my hand again just to be able to separate it from the edge of the bowl there. That's looking really good. So that'll come out nicely. So I'll put this over here in case I need it. And I'll slide this across here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to sprinkle some flour, just normal bread making flour on the work surface. Just like that. I'm going to get the dough and tip it out onto the surface. I'll get rid of that over the back here. Okay, so it's pretty wet. I'll get my divider and I'll divide it into 2 equal sized portions. There we have one, and there we have our second. So I'll just make sure this is covered a little bit in the dough. So what we do here is I like to stretch out the dough just a little bit and form it into a rough rectangle, sort of a longer rectangle. I usually get flour everywhere and my wife doesn't really like that, but shh, don't tell her. She freaks out about the flour on here, and rightly so. Okay, so we've done that. So then I put a roll over the top and then another roll over here like that, just nothing too fancy. Now the important thing here is I start rolling it up and I try and keep it fairly tight. So I'm trying to get some tension into the top of my ball here, which is what I've done there. Okay, so from there, I'll just move that over here, just a little bit more flour. And we've got to keep that tension, because by getting some tension in the top, tomorrow when we bake it, we're going to get some oven spring. And the oven spring occurs because of the tension. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically going underneath and turning at the same time. So my hands are scooping under it, lifting it and turning it, and that's creating some tension across the very top. If you don't like these little things, you can sort of just fold that down a little bit. In the end, I don't think it really matters, but the dough feels really nice. So you just get the flour underneath it, keep squeezing it underneath, and the top of the dough is becoming a lot more tense, and we should get some reasonable oven spring in the morning. So that's pretty much it. So we've got a dough. So at that point, I'm going to upend it, put it in my basket and move it across. And then we pretty much do the same thing with this one. Where am I going? I've got a little bit of flour on my top. Usually I get covered in it. So that's it. So we try not to flatten it. There's been a little bit of rise in the dough, so we don't want to push down too much. We want to keep a little bit of air in the dough, because it has been proving while we've been stretching and folding. So we'll do the same thing over the top there, over the top there. Then we start rolling again, trying to keep the tension in the dough, like that. Good. I'll just fold that over the edge there, and a little bit there, and we start our tensioning. So we've got 2 really nice little balls here. Keep, so once again, underneath and then turn, underneath and turn, and the whole time that's pulling the top of the dough and creating tension. Takes a bit of practice, but it's not hard. Nothing about this is very hard, it's just you need a little bit of time. It's funny, you need a lot of time to wait, but there's only a few minutes worth of work for each loaf. That's it. And I didn't do this before, but I'll do it now. A little bit of flour over the top, rub it in, that helps to stop it from sticking. Pull this one across. Okay, put it upside down. So the upside down bit of the dough is going to be the top of the loaf tomorrow. So once we've done that, we just fold the towel across, like so, not too tight, fairly loose. And then I'm going to put this one over here. The same thing again with this one. Fold that across. Fold that across, spilling rice flour everywhere. That's pretty good, nice and loose. And I'm going to put that over there. And I'm going to let that rest until morning, sort of, 10 hours, 12 hours, something like that. Given this room temperature, it's going to be cool tonight and we won't have the heating on once we go to bed. It'll rise nice and slowly. You can put it in the fridge and leave it for a lot longer, But tonight, because it's not summer and it's not hot, I'll leave it out overnight and I'll see you in the morning for the next step. So here we are the next morning. It's 5:25. Definitely time for a coffee. Much better. Okay, so we've been letting the bread proof overnight. And here we have the result. So this was just out on the bench overnight. We've just got to be a bit careful here. We don't want to let all the air out with the tea towel sticking, but that's risen up to the top of the basket and is looking very, very good. So the next thing we do here is we get some baking paper. And pop that on the top. And then we tip it upside down. So then we take that out and just very gently we pull off the tea towel. And we've got a beautiful looking pre-baked loaf. Put that in there. So there's a little bit of excess flour, rice flour on top. Just got to get rid of that. Don't really need that in the cooking process. That's pretty good. Good. So I have my bread lane here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut it. You can do all sorts of imaginative cuts. I'm just going to do a very unimaginative cut into a bit of a crescent. So you can see, I can feel how soft it is and how much air is inside. So I've made a bit of a butcher of that, but that will be fine. So the next step is I've had the oven preheating, so it's on 250 degrees. It's been there for about 40 minutes. So I'm now going to move over here and I'm going to put the bread into my cast iron pot with a lid, and then we're going to cook it. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to get out the cast iron pot from the oven, which is preheated to 250 degrees. It's been in there for about 40 minutes, and we'll get to the next bit. Get the fan on. A lot of hot air comes out of the oven. Now we just drag in the bread, put it in the pot, put the lid on, open the oven, just turn that down. So that's in there, and we'll set it for 15 minutes. I've got to have a look at what time it is. So in 15 minutes we'll get back and we'll see how we're going. Okay, I've just had a camera malfunction, so we're going to deal with this as we go. So it's been in for 15 minutes. Now we're going to take the lid off. Some nice spring in there, and it's looking really good. So close that. Turn that down. Okay, so now we'll come back in about 15 minutes. So I'm just keeping that on the same temperature, and we'll be ready to see what it looks like. Okay, so it's been 15 minutes. So now it's time for the moment of truth. Always the exciting part to see what it looks like. Looking fantastic. Close that. preheat this back in the oven. So let's have a look at what we've produced. So it's very hot, but we have some nice little oven spring. So it's risen beautifully. You can see where I've cut it. It's got really good colour, and very happy with that loaf. So we'll just wait for that to get up to temperature again, and then I'll put the second loaf in and we'll see how that goes. It's now time to get the second loaf out of the oven, so we'll see how it looks. Looking really nice. Just pop that down there. Turn the oven off, take out the baking paper, and it's very hot, but you can see where they've got some oven spring, and you can see the little cross that I've made there. Looking very, very good. Now if I get down here, turn this off. If I get the microphone close and stay silent, you might just be able to hear a little bit of cracking. There's a bit of noise there, but I love the cracking sound that you get when you take it out of the oven. So there's my process of how I make my sourdough bread. There's so many different variables to it. I would just encourage you to give it a go. So I'm very happy with those results. I suppose we probably should do one thing, and that's taste it. So normally I wouldn't cut one of these for a couple of hours, let it cool, but I'm going to cut this one. So I'll just pop this off to the side. We'll get the one that I baked earlier. Now I'll just give it a bit of a cut. So we can see there's some nice crumb, and in the development there, looks really nice. So I'll cut that as well. You can hear the crustiness of the bread, yet it's actually very soft and moist in the middle. Nothing goes better with bread than homemade butter. So what I will do, I make my own butter. I have been making it for 3 years, and at some point I'll do a video, and I'll put a link at the top of the page there to the video on how I make my own butter. Really simple, sounds difficult, but it isn't, particularly if you have the right equipment. So we've got some butter on there. One thing left to do. Bon appetit. Fantastic.